Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I could feel my cheeks burning before Grandma even finished her speech. My name is Sophie Reynolds. I'm 27 years old, and I live in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. My grandmother Margaret was turning 85, and the entire family had gathered in a rented community room decorated with gold streamers and a giant 85 balloon arch. Everyone looked polished and successful. Everyone except me. I sat at the end of the long table, pushing a piece of carrot cake around my plate while Grandma held court at the other end. She was standing next to my cousin Jessica, practically glowing as she bragged. Jessica and her husband just bought their second house. Her husband is a lawyer, so proud of them. Jessica smiled sweetly, the kind of smile that told me she knew I wasn't about to get the same praise. And Michael, Grandma continued, turning toward my tall, grinning cousin. Michael's sales numbers in pharmaceuticals are breaking records. I always knew he'd make something of himself. I kept my eyes down, pretending to check my phone. I already knew what was coming. And then we have Sophie. Grandma paused, her voice softening, but not in a good way. She's she's figuring things out. Isn't that right, dear? The table chuckled, politely. My mother gave me a sympathetic look, but she didn't defend me. She never did. I had left business school 3 years ago to start my own company in cybersecurity, Quantum Shield Technologies. It had been rough at first, but I had worked hard, harder than anyone in that room knew. And now the company was doing better than I ever dreamed. Still, to my family, I was just the girl who dropped out, still unmarried, still living modestly. She's got time, Michael added with a smirk. Maybe one day she'll find a nice guy and settle down. I forced a smile. My throat felt tight. No one knew about the sleepless nights I'd spent building my business from nothing. To them, I was still the family disappointment. The noise in the room was too much. I slipped away, muttering something about needing fresh air. Outside, the cool evening air hit my face, and I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. That's when the door opened, and a man stepped in, holding a clipboard. He looked slightly out of place in his gray suit. "Excuse me," he said, scanning the room behind me. "I'm looking for Sophie Reynolds." I straightened. "That's me," he smiled warmly. "I'm William Morrison from the Sunset Grove Retirement Facility. I have some news about your anonymous donations." The door behind me creaked open, and voices spilled out. My heart skipped a beat. Donations? What was he doing here? William Morrison stepped past me with a polite nod and into the community room. I followed, a step behind, my pulse hammering in my ears. Conversations died down as everyone turned to look at the stranger in the gray suit holding a clipboard. "Good evening," he said, his voice warm but formal. "I apologize for interrupting your celebration, but I couldn't leave without thanking someone very important here tonight." His eyes scanned the room before landing on me. Sophie Reynolds. I froze, every head at the table swiveling in my direction. Grandma frowned. "Sophie, what's this about?" William smiled kindly. "I'm the director at Sunset Grove Retirement Facility. For the past 2 years, someone has been quietly donating to help us upgrade our facilities and improve our care for seniors. We recently found out that person is Sophie." The room fell completely silent. I could feel my face heating as Jessica's eyebrows shot up, and Michael leaned forward like he hadn't heard right. William continued, seemingly unaware of the tension. "Her generosity has allowed us to purchase state-of-the-art medical equipment, renovate our common areas, and expand our wellness programs. In total, her contributions have amounted to over $2.3 million. I heard someone gasp. I think it was my mother. My uncle muttered something under his breath. Grandma's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I swallowed hard, wishing I could disappear, but William wasn't done. "It's not just the donations. Sophie's company, Quantum Shield Technologies, has provided advanced cybersecurity for our systems, protecting sensitive data and ensuring the safety of our residents. We're now one of the most secure facilities in the state." The silence broke with a low murmur from the table. Jessica tilted her head. "Wait, you run that company?" she asked, as if I'd been hiding a secret identity. I nodded once, awkwardly. "Yeah, I started it after leaving business school." Grandma's eyes narrowed slightly. $2 million? From you?" It didn't sound like a compliment, more like she was trying to make sense of the numbers. William, still smiling, reached out to shake my hand. "We're honored to have you as a partner, Sophie. You've made an incredible impact on the lives of so many people." I mumbled a thank you, but inside, I felt the room shift. For the first time, they were all looking at me, not as the family disappointment, but as someone they had completely underestimated. For a long moment, nobody said a word. William had left, but the weight of his words still hung in the room like a heavy curtain. My family sat there, staring at me as if I had just revealed I was secretly living on Mars. Grandma Margaret was the first to speak. $2 million? She repeated, her voice trembling. How is that even possible? You don't have that kind of money. You live in that tiny apartment. I nodded slowly. Yes, I do, because I choose to. I've put my money into things that matter to me. Jessica leaned forward, her mouth slightly open. Wait a second, so you've been this successful and you never told anyone? Why would you still drive that old Honda if you're like a millionaire? I shrugged. Because I like it. It runs fine and I don't need a new car to prove anything. Michael whistled under his breath, shaking his head. You're telling us you left business school to do this? A company? And now you're giving away millions like it's nothing? It's not nothing, I said, my voice calm but firm. The retirement home needed upgrades and medical equipment. I had the means to help, so I did. That's all. The room went silent again. My mother looked at me with a mixture of pride and confusion. Why didn't you tell us, Sophie? Why keep something like this a secret? Because every time I tried to talk about what I was doing, no one seemed interested, I admitted, glancing toward Grandma. I wasn't a lawyer like Jessica's husband, or climbing corporate ladders like Michael. Everyone assumed I was just failing. Grandma shifted in her seat, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Her face was pale, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. She had spent years painting me as the one who hadn't made it, and now the story had flipped. Michael chuckled nervously. Man, I feel like I've been living under a rock. Quantum Shield Technologies. I think I read about that company in a tech journal last year. That was you? I nodded again, feeling oddly exposed. Yeah, that was me. Jessica's voice softened, though her expression was still skeptical. So you're like, rich? I smiled faintly. I'm doing fine, but it's not about the money. It never was. For once, no one had a quick remark or a backhanded comment. They were processing, and I could see the realization sinking in. They had been wrong about me all along. The silence stretched until I thought Grandma might just leave the room. But then I saw her slowly push back her chair. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the table for balance. All the chatter and whispers from my relatives stopped instantly. It was rare for Grandma to move with such hesitation, and something about the look in her eyes made me sit up straighter. She walked toward me, her thin frame moving carefully down the length of the table. When she stopped beside me, I noticed her expression was softer than I'd ever seen it. Sophie, she said, her voice quieter than I expected. I owe you an apology. I blinked. Grandma, you don't... No, she interrupted, shaking her head. Let me finish. I've spent years thinking I knew what success looked like. I believed it had to be neat, respectable, and easy for others to understand. I judged you for not following the path I thought you should take. I was wrong. The words hit me harder than I expected. For as long as I could remember, I had been waiting, hoping, for her to see me for who I was. I swallowed, my throat tight. Her hand, frail but steady now, reached for mine. I didn't know the things you've been doing. I didn't realize you were helping people like me, people my age, live better lives. You didn't have to do that, yet you did. And you never once tried to brag or use it to prove anything. I glanced around the room. Even Jessica and Michael looked surprised at the sincerity in Grandma's tone. My mother's eyes were shining, and I realized she might be tearing up. Grandma? I started, but I couldn't find the words. She gave my hand a light squeeze. I'm proud of you, Sophie. I see you now. Not for what you should have been, but for who you are. For the first time all evening, I felt something shift in my chest, a weight lifting, replaced with something warm and real. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Grandma's apology had left me raw, like someone had peeled away years of frustration in a single breath. Everyone's eyes were still on me, waiting for me to explain myself, maybe even justify my choices. So, for the first time, I decided to tell them the truth. I left business school because it didn't feel right, I began, my voice steady but low. Everyone thought I gave up, but I didn't. I left because I wanted to build something on my own, something that mattered. Michael raised an eyebrow. You're saying that tech company of yours started right after that? I nodded. Yeah, Quantum Shield Technologies was just me and a laptop in my apartment. I barely had enough money for rent, but I believed in what I was doing. I started developing software to protect companies from cyber attacks. At first, no one cared. I spent months living off instant noodles and coffee. But eventually, I built something that worked. Really worked. Jessica leaned forward. You're telling us that old laptop of yours turned into all this? She gestured vaguely, as if the idea still didn't compute. Exactly, I said, smiling faintly. Now Quantum Shield Technologies handles cybersecurity for hospitals, banks, and government agencies. Last year, we signed a $50 million contract with the Department of Defense to secure critical infrastructure. My work has stopped attacks that could have shut down entire cities. The room fell silent. I let my words sink in before continuing. The money I've made from those contracts? That's what I used to help Sunset Grove. They needed modern medical equipment, a new wing for rehabilitation, and better security. My donations covered all of that. Grandma's mouth opened slightly, her eyes glistening. You did that for us? For people like me? I nodded. Yes, Grandma. I wanted to give back. I didn't need recognition for it. I just wanted the people who live there to feel safe and cared for. For once, even Jessica didn't have a snide remark. My mother reached over and touched my arm. Sophie, why didn't you tell us all this before? I shrugged. Because it wasn't about proving myself. I wanted to focus on the work, on doing something meaningful, not just looking successful. As I spoke, I realized the room felt different now. They weren't seeing the dropout or the family disappointment anymore. They were starting to see me for who I really was. For a while, no one spoke. I could feel the weight of their thoughts hanging in the air, like they were all trying to rewrite the story they'd believed about me for years. Michael was the first to break the silence. So, cybersecurity, he said, leaning back in his chair. I didn't realize that kind of work could make someone that successful. I always thought it was just tech support stuff. I almost laughed, but I could tell he was being sincere. It's more than that, I explained. We build security systems to prevent data breaches and protect critical infrastructure. Hospitals, banks, power grids, things people rely on every day without thinking about it. Jessica shook her head slowly. I honestly didn't get it before. I figured you left business school because you couldn't handle it. But now, wow, Sophie, I had no idea. My mother, who had been quiet until now, gave me a small, regretful smile. Honey, I have to admit something. I never understood why you wanted to leave school. I thought you were throwing away your future, and I never asked enough questions about what you were really doing. I'm sorry for that. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I realized how much I'd craved that kind of support when I was struggling in the early days. Grandma shifted in her seat, her hands resting gently on the table. All these years, I kept thinking you were lost. I didn't know you had a vision, a plan bigger than any of us could see. I took a deep breath. I didn't talk about it because I didn't want to argue. I knew what I was building would take time, and I didn't need validation from anyone but myself. Michael rubbed the back of his neck, looking sheepish. I guess we were all too busy comparing everyone's lives, trying to fit you into our version of success. Jessica nodded reluctantly. Yeah, we were pretty quick to judge. For the first time, I felt a genuine shift. They weren't just shocked anymore. They were beginning to understand. And it was strange, but also freeing, to see them realize how wrong they had been about me all these years. The tension that had lingered all evening began to shift into something I didn't recognize. Curiosity, maybe even respect. My family, who once brushed me off as the aimless one, now leaned in as if they were hearing my voice for the first time. Jessica broke the silence. So, what's next for you, Sophie? Are you planning to grow the company even more? Her tone was different now. No sarcasm, no thinly veiled judgment. She actually sounded interested. I hesitated, not used to sharing my plans with them. We're working on a new platform that uses AI to detect cyber threats before they happen. It's complicated, but if it works, it could protect millions of people's data worldwide. Michael whistled softly. You mean the stuff we hear about on the news, like those major hacks on banks and hospitals? You're stopping that? I nodded. That's the goal. We've already stopped a few big ones. You'd be surprised how much damage a single attack could cause. Even something like a hospital's life support systems could be at risk. It's serious. Grandma, who had been quiet for a while, reached for my hand again. Her grip was weak, but full of something I hadn't felt from her in years. Pride. I had no idea, sweetheart. I always thought computers were just, well, for games and typing letters. But you're out there protecting people. That's real work. Her words made my throat tighten. I managed a small smile. Thanks, Grandma. It means a lot to hear you say that. Would you Maybe show me how these computers really work, she asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. I want to understand what you do. Maybe not all the complicated stuff, but the basics. I chuckled. Sure, Grandma. I'd love to. My mother leaned forward, her voice soft. I think we all want to know more about your work. We've spent so much time comparing everyone's careers that we never stop to appreciate what you've built. For the first time, I felt truly seen. I wasn't the outlier anymore. I was part of this family, not because I finally measured up to their standards, but because they were starting to realize that success doesn't have to look the same for everyone. As the conversation shifted to questions about my projects, my team, and my plans for the future, I felt a new confidence settling in. For the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking in their presence, I was standing tall. The party was winding down, and the chatter that had once felt like knives now felt softer, almost warm. People were gathering their coats, hugging Grandma, and wishing her a happy birthday. I had been sitting off to the side, quietly watching, when I felt a light tap on my arm. It was Grandma Margaret. Sophie, she said gently, come with me for a moment. Her voice was no longer sharp or commanding. It had softened, like it carried something she needed me to hear. I followed her to a quieter corner of the community room, away from the last of the guests. She turned to me slowly, and for the first time in a long while, she looked less like the unshakable matriarch of our family and more like a woman humbled by what she had learned tonight. I wanted to say this before everyone leaves, she began, her hands clasped together. I am proud of you, Sophie. Truly proud. Her voice wavered just enough for me to feel the weight behind her words. For years, I've measured success by the wrong standards. I thought being married, wearing a nice suit, or having a fancy title was the only way to make something of yourself. But I see now that I was wrong. I swallowed hard, trying not to let my emotions show too much. Grandma, you don't have to. She reached out and held my hand, her grip surprisingly firm. Yes, I do. I judged you unfairly. I couldn't see past my own idea of what life should look like, and I failed to understand that your path, your hard work, has done more good than I could have imagined. You've given people hope, safety, and care. That's more important than any title or house. Her words sank deep into me, dissolving years of quiet resentment. I smiled, feeling both relieved and seen in a way I never had been before. Thank you, I whispered. That means more than you know. She smiled back, her eyes crinkling. I hope you'll show me more of what you do. Teach me how to use that computer of mine without breaking it. I think I'd like that. I laughed softly, nodding. I'd like that too. For the first time in years, I walked out of a family gathering feeling lighter, knowing that I didn't need their approval, but having it on my own terms felt like the sweetest victory.